I'm putting this one in my pseudo-podcast category because it's more about audio than video, along with my normal About Dragongate series, where I mostly had still images rather than the video clips in my usual content. If you like this kind of thing, let me know, because audio is a lot easier to produce and takes way less time. Dragongate's Rey de Parejas Tag League 2025 is in the books, and all things considered, I think it went pretty well, so I wanted to compare and contrast it with Dragongate's last major tournament, King of Gate 2024. Rey de Parejas had a good lineup, an easy-to-follow block structure, and the long-awaited return of free YouTube matches. The matches ranged from good to great, and the final bracket ended with some surprises, especially being an all-Z-Rats final, with the rookie Homare showing everyone why the company is backing him, competing in 3 matches in one night alongside Shun, including the block tiebreaker, the semifinals, and the finals. And this kid only just debuted in September. And as a side note, it also added something Dragongate has been doing for the last year or so. With the company operating out of Kobe, Sambo Hall has become sort of a home base with shows almost equivalent to Korakuen shows. But in late 2024, Dragongate took what I think was one of their biggest missteps in recent history when they ran their annual King of Gate tournament. Normally that occurs before Kobe World or in the lead up to Dangerous Gate, sometime in the summer or early autumn, but instead, in 2024 they put Dangerous Gate in August and held off King of Gate until November, between Gate of Destiny and Final Gate, which was a very weird place for it. Now first I'll address the things they couldn't control. Dragon Kid suffered a horrific neck injury in his first match and had to forfeit the rest of the tournament. Nobody knows how the rest of the block stats would have been affected, but I don't think he was making it to the finals anyway. But instead of replacing him in the block, they just gave all his opponents 1 point. Second, Shun Skywalker had to forfeit his final block match due to illness, which almost certainly did change the booking of the semifinal brackets. Both of these things suck, but it happens. But there were multiple other problems because they made it utterly confusing to follow. First of all, this was the first time in a long time that they decided not to air all of the matches. Partially because the music guy was doing the edits and uploads and didn't want to do house shows anymore, which honestly I kinda get because as a professional editor myself, it's extra work that isn't really the audio guy's job and he probably doesn't get paid more for it. I even reached out to volunteer to cut the footage myself if they'd give me access to it, but I was told that being short-staffed wasn't the problem. Gaura Sports just didn't want to front the money for it. They scaled back on production by quite a bit, at least in part due to the LEC president retiring when he was their biggest benefactor. So we only got to see a small handful of actual tournament matches during a month when there was already a shortage of network shows even without the extra house show content. Most of the matches we did see were really good, but many were also very short. So in between that and not seeing most of them, it seems like the blocks were just kind of window dressing for the semifinal brackets, and they only really cared about that final stretch, which almost makes sense considering how needlessly complicated the block structure was. Now, I don't care what anyone says, round-robin blocks aren't that confusing, but they certainly found a way. It was an odd number with 3 separate blocks, and originally it was advertised that the end brackets would be the A block winner versus the B block winner, and then the C block winner would fight the winner of a second chance match, where the second place winners of each block would fight it out. They've done second chance matches like this before, but usually in Battle Royal form. This time though, it was the runners-up of every block in a 3-way. With me so far? Well, good, because it got more complicated. A block's second place tied in points, so the second chance match became a 4-way instead of a 3-way. But then B block's first place also tied, so to break that tie, there was a tiebreaker singles match between the 2 winners. The winner of that tiebreaker would advance to B block's open spot, and the loser of the tiebreaker would then be B block's entry into the second chance match, which was now a 4-way because of the aforementioned A block second place tie. Still with me? Complicating things even further, the match was for the right to challenge anyone in the main event at Final Gate, which would presumably be the Open the Dream Gate champion Yamato. The thing is, Yamato was also in the tournament, so if he won, he would get to name his own main event challenger anyway, which would render the entire tournament useless. He ended up being second in his block, but he didn't win the second chance match. Still with me? It gets worse. So once they finally decided the final 4, they decided that instead of just having A versus B and C versus the second place winner, they would shuffle the pairings by lottery. If they left it as is, it would have been Kota Minoura versus Masaki Mochizuki and KZ versus Dragon Daya. Both would have been really interesting. The shuffling also could have made it Minoura versus Daya in the semis, and KZ versus Mochi in a rematch of their tiebreaker. If it were this one, the finals would have been way more in doubt. Instead it was Daya versus Mochi and KZ versus Minoura, followed by a Minoura-Daya final. I have to believe the original plan here was Daya running through Minoura in the semifinals and then Shun in the finals to defeat both of his former Masquerade partners, and that KZ probably wouldn't have made it into the bracket. Now, sure, Dragon Daya's win solidified him as a major player. Daya declared that he would defend the Brave Gate in the main event of Final Gate, but he wanted to challenge Yamato, who then decided, hey, why not, I'll put up the Dream Gate 2, title for title. That match did a lot for Daya, and now he looks like a major star. He's now been invited back to New Japan Super Juniors for the 2nd year in a row. The thing is, he lost, meaning Yamato also became the Brave Gate champion, and temporarily retired it for several months. So the mid-card and smaller guys had one less thing to fight for, right after it was made important again by Hyo and Daya for the entire year. So let's recap. They had a tournament at a weird time of year that we couldn't even watch, with short matches, with an overly complicated block system where booking had to be changed multiple times due to injury and illness. The reigning champion had a chance to nullify the whole thing, the simplest part of the tournament was made even more complex, and the winner came out as a net negative because he not only lost the match but also his title belt in the process, which then went into limbo after being built up for the entire past year. And don't get me wrong, Yamato's run is great, and Paradox has been great, but considering all of this mess, I have to ask, what was the point? So that's one of the big reasons for me, at least, that Rey de Parejas felt much better, because they didn't have this big mess, and we actually got to see it, and the matches took time, and there were interesting pairings. They even sent the Gaura crew out to some of the house shows, and gave us more network shows than usual, so it felt like they really put some effort into that one. And to top it off, Rey de Parejas developed several storylines, especially for D-Courage with Yuki's return, building up to an intense Dead or Alive card where everything feels important. And don't get me wrong, that Daya-Yamato match was great, and again, it made Daya look like a star, but I feel like there were other ways to do that. It's a rare misstep for Dragongate, and that's what makes it more glaring. So fortunately, Rey de Parejas may have restored the feeling a bit. Hopefully King of Gate 2025 will return to its regularly scheduled programming, but if you're seeing this in the future, is the world even still there anymore? Sorry, I didn't know how to end this.